So today I thought it would be fun if we looked at 10 things that might shock Americans when they visit the Isle of Ireland. Now, I'm going to assume if you're watching this video, you know more than nothing about Ireland.
Oh, I know, nothing there.
If you're anticipating coming here and seeing leprechauns or wondering why we don't all work on farms, then I think you need to go a few videos back. This video is primarily aimed at people who know something about Ireland. I do have a whole Ireland playlist on the channel. If you want to check that out, go for it. Before I get into the video, do be sure to subscribe, otherwise you're going to be cursed with smelly feet. So subscribe! Okay, the first thing that might shock Americans when they come over to Ireland is our strict advertising laws. You will not see any ads here for prescription medication.
Hi everybody!
Hi, Dr. Nick!
Those kind of ads are actually only legal in New Zealand and the USA, and I've commented before about how funny I find the disclaimers when I go over. They're like a bajillion sentences long, and the last one is always,
may result in death.
if somebody's trying to sell me something that they warn me may result in death, it's going to put me off just a tad, just a tad. Pretty much true of anything. I mean, you could eat a bar of chocolate and that could result in death.
I love chocolate.
It's probably less likely, but it could. You also will see a much tighter regulation on political ads here. You won't see them running on the TV, and they won't be any fancy, cute little ads like you see in America. I say cute, some of them are devastating. Here they are strictly business only. It's mostly just the big cards you'll see up on signposts and also flyers that come in your door. They have to be fact-based and they can't be any razzle-dazzle about them at all. You may argue that takes the fun and entertainment out of politics. Yeah, Irish politics is pretty boring. The next thing you'll notice if you come to Ireland, and this is going to be hella awkward for Americans and Canadians alike. If you're paying for something on a debit or credit card, it will not come up an option to tip. You have to actually tell them with your mouth hole that you want to tip them a certain amount.
Disclaimer, it has happened, maybe a handful of times that we've had the option to do that in Ireland, but mostly no.
So if something costs me €20, I have to say to them, add on €5 there, because you look really scabby if you're like, add on €2. 10% is more the standard tip here in Ireland, by the way, in case you were wondering. A lot of times people actually won't tip on their debit or credit card, but they'll tip in cash. That's also something that's commonly done here. But it also leaves the opportunity open for the waiter or waitress or the hairdressers or whoever to go, oh, thanks very much for the tip, which is something I find a little lacking when I go over to America. I'm like, are you going to thank me for tipping you? But I do appreciate there's a whole different structure in place there, and that tips are more kind of standard and expected there. Still, saying thank you is always pleasant.
Manners matter.
Another thing you'll notice if you come over here is that if you go into a supermarket or a newsagent or something like that and you go to the soft drink section, you might see some energy drinks, which is normal. That's not the strange thing. We're getting to the strange thing. What is strange is that you might also see a sign that says over 16s only. This is because when the caffeine content in some particular drinks is really, really high, they can't be sold to people under the age of 16. Now, I have never ever seen this enforced in Ireland, but I can't say I was ever in a scenario when I was under 16 to try and be buying the really high caffeine energy drinks. That came in college when I was trying to pull all-nighters because I hadn't studied all term. I did once get pulled up in a pound shop because I was trying to buy an arts and crafts knife. I was 20 at the time and they said I had to be over 16, so flattered. But no, I didn't get to buy the craft knife and that pissed me off. I did get a load of Diamante though, so.
Non-creative? Ha! I'll have you know I bedazzle my own underpants.
The next thing that will surprise people if they come over here is that in Ireland and also in the UK, you are required to have a television license if you have a television. It's not like a driving license, like you don't need to qualify for it per se, but if you have any kind of screen in your house, you are required to have a television license. That includes computer screens, even if you're not watching television on them. I know, it's kind of crazy. The arguing point is that you could, if you wanted, watch television on them. The television license is somewhat contentious here. A lot of people don't believe it should have to be paid, but it goes towards the fee to the National Broadcasting Channel of Ireland, which is RTE, Radio Telefiseren. And that's how they run the station. And it's supposed to be a neutral Irish station nationally. The majority of the time you'll find like your parents will pay the TV license, but People in college won't, because they'll be living somewhere for like a year. And when the TV license inspector comes around to knock on your front door, which is a thing that happens, people will like hide in cupboards and things. People get brought to court and have to pay a fee if they don't pay their TV license, but I haven't actually heard of anybody being caught for it. I am a law-abiding citizen, I pay my TV license, so yay for me. The next thing you might notice if you come over here is that some places offer a high degree of trust when it comes to the general public, like for example some newspaper stands and also some places that sell water. The newspapers will just be left sitting there, or the water will be just left there, and it'll say pay €1, be honest, or whatever the fee is. And the majority of the time people do. I would assume. I haven't heard of a spate of newspaper or water robberies in Ireland, so yeah. I mean, there are bad people everywhere. I'd say sometimes couriers come along and they rob bottles of water and stuff, but obviously it doesn't happen that often. Most people tend to be honest. I don't know, I always find it pretty cool when I see that, because I'm like, aw, trust in the public. I remember in Monterey Bay we saw those ones in America that have like you put the coin in and then you open it and then the newspaper comes out, and I felt that operates on a degree of trust, because I could just rob like 10 newspapers if I wanted. Theoretically, could I? I think so. The next thing you will notice here, aside from the fact that we drive on the opposite side of the road than you, is that we also cater to you, because enough tourists have just walked out under cars. At our zebra crossings, and that's right, I said zebra, not zebra, they have little signs on the road that tell you which direction you need to be looking in to cross the road. I always find that funny. I literally think to myself, gosh, enough people have made the mistake of going the wrong way. Also, if you are in Ireland, don't assume you can just walk straight across. You need to kind of stop and wait till somebody's sound to let you cross. They should do, they're supposed to stop, but sometimes they don't. The next thing you'll notice in Ireland, if you visit here and go to, say, a hotel or a fancy Airbnb or something, is that places will only have shave units in the bathroom. That's the only plug socket that they'll have. And some of you guys actually explained this to me before in comments. It's something to do with the grounding. I'm not an electrician, I don't know, but we don't have plug sockets in our bathrooms because basically you would electrocute yourself here if you had them. So for some reason, somebody somewhere deemed the power supply from electric shavers to be low enough to warrant them to be allowed in the bathroom, and obviously enough people needed electric razors in the bathroom that basically you're allowed to shave with an electric razor, but it's specifically only for an electric razor. And that'd be like one that comes with the hotel with a special connecting socket. Am I making sense? I hope so. Also, some places that have gone super high tech now have USB adapters in the bathroom, and that's because sometimes when people are on the toilet they like to... Never mind. Moving on, tumble dryers are not standard in Ireland. So yes, the majority of the time your parents' house probably had a tumble dryer because that's their like forever home, but most younger people don't necessarily have tumble dryers in their house / apartment / bedsit. This is because we don't necessarily have the room here for a whole separate laundry room. A lot of the time our washing machine is in the kitchen, and to also have a tumble dryer would just be cumbersome and there's not enough space for them. My apartment doesn't have a tumble dryer, so I just use the radiators or like the little fold up stands and things just dry that way. I do like having a tumble dryer, I must say. I had one in my old house. It makes life a lot easier, but it also makes your jumpers more shrinky. The penultimate thing, and I actually think this is quite sweet, in Ireland we have voiceovers before our television shows, and these are actual live people sitting in the studio doing the voiceovers, introing the next TV show. I know a little bit about this because one of my friends actually does it, like for her full-time job. She sits in the studio and she just waits for the next TV show to come on and she announces it. Also, if there was a sudden news flash or something, she'd have to announce that too. So they basically can't leave the room, and she told me like it's a big deal when you have to go to the bathroom. You have to be really sure that you're okay to leave the room in case the whole channel goes down or something, and there's just one person there doing that job for like their entire shift. And they'll say things like, coming up next is Father Ted. Look out, Father, you're going to get a kick up the arse. Coming up at 8. Or you're watching Radio Television Sharon. Stay tuned, tonight the Late Late Show will be hosting Damien O'Donnell. Damien? I don't know, I actually think it's really nice and sort of personal. I'm like very pro the voiceover. And finally, number 1, in Ireland, the president is not in charge. Our president-elect is kind of more of a figurehead. They go out and do nice things like shake people's hands, sign documents for photographs, But in actuality, the government is in charge, and more importantly, the Taoiseach, aka the Prime Minister. Now, right now in Ireland, we have a funny situation where we have a Taoiseach and also a Taoiseach who are kind of simultaneously in charge. So when the whole thing that we're not allowed to say on YouTube started, we had a guy in, and he was the Taoiseach, and then there was the Deputy Prime Minister, the Taoiseach, and they decided to form a coalition. I'm explaining this very simplistically, whereby both parties would have equal ownership over the country, and they basically swap parts. So the deputy became the main person, and the main person became the deputy, and then they're going to swap back in 2022. I know, it's kind of strange. I really am explaining that quite simplistically, but I hope it makes sense. Basically, I guess they decided nobody's winning in this situation, so sure, we'll all share the power. But then the other parties who weren't elected were all a bit pissy about it, so yeah, we're not going to get into it too much, but yeah, that's the situation. The president's not in charge. Politics, they're a mess. Let me know below in comments of anything that you found surprising or shocking that you learnt or discovered when you visited another country. Over to Chewy for the shoutouts.
Hi everyone, Chewy here. The first patron I want to shout out is Brian Ediger. He said the time is moving so fast right now. I want to shout out all the content creators for giving new stuff to enjoy, otherwise life will get very boring very quickly. I think he means you, Mummy. Oh, thanks, Brian.
I'm going to help Chewy with this next shout out. It's from the random stranger in memory of his Aunt Helen, and this is such a lovely poem he wanted me to read. In our hearts, we thought of you today, but that is nothing new. We thought about you yesterday too. We think of you in silence. We often speak your name. Now we all have memories and your picture in a frame. Your memory is our keepsake, which we will never part. God has you in his keeping. We have you in our hearts. And he says, I love you, Aunt Helen. We miss her so much. Apparently she was from Scotland and spent most of her time in Spain. So that's lovely. Thank you so much, the random stranger. And that's it for today's video. See you on the other side. Bye. They're like a bajillion disclaimers long, and the last one is always, and you might... They're like a bajillion... You also will not see any political ads. You also will see a much... If you're paying for something... The next thing you might notice if you come over here is in some places they operate... The next thing you might notice... Why are you so panty? Yay! Yay, Chewy!